You know, those words are in a tradition of the kind of prayers that we have heard more often growing up. There are some that are supplicating, saying, "Oh, please." And there are others that are a little bit more boldly, maybe because there's a passion behind them, making a demand. Make me an instrument. And there's a very strong desire there. And what we teach here is even a step beyond that. It is a declaration of something as already true that we can't see yet. Because what we do here is we study and practice this idea that when we pray believing, we make room for that which we are ready to experience. We literally make ourselves ready for it by believing. And still, I want to share just one line. I kind of got excited. I was at a conference this weekend with a bunch of friends of mine, and I was thinking about a line from a prayer, from a traditional grouping, that says, "Relieve me of the bondage of self." And it's part of this beautiful prayer of surrender. And I love it because the bondage of self, as I understand it now, being part of this teaching, is just what was read from Ernest Holmes, what Aggie read from the book. Is a bunch of those false ideas that somehow took root, and the memories of which are still creating and showing up as our current experience. Even though up here between our today ears, we think that we believe something else about ourselves. So, you weren't sitting there with me, but when I do a newsletter, and then it goes out on Facebook, and then it goes here, and then it goes there, there's all these little things. There's subject lines and quotes and snippets and what's-its. And I ended up with a whole stack of them. So the first one was "Relieve me of the bondage of self." And the second one was "Freedom through self-honesty." And the third one was "We clap for the truth." And the fourth one, which was today's title, it's all leading up to "Decoding life's signals and finding freedom and joy." I want to back up for just a moment. Some of you heard from me. Anybody else go to Costco and read the Brene Brown piece in the catalog? Just go. Get it. Really great interview with Brene Brown. And there's this little quote on the side. She talks about going to a leadership meeting at Costco. And the CEO gets up there, and what he does is he tells the truth. And he's asked some challenging questions at whatever their annual meeting or their leadership meeting was about. And it was uncomfortable. You could feel it in the room, she says. And what his answers were so authentic and so unrehearsed and so raw and so true and so real that you'd think that maybe people would all get really quiet and, or whatever. And then she heard applause. And she spoke to the woman next to her and she said, "What we do here is we clap for the truth." Isn't that beautiful? I love that. We clap for the truth. So a similar phrase that I learned many, many years ago from a minister in Fort Lauderdale was, "If you can't hide it, paint it red." Isn't that great? Isn't that great? So what we're talking about, you start to get the feeling that we're talking about the freedom that comes with telling the truth, okay? The freedom that comes with getting real. When we just let down, whether it's the weight of pretense with other people, or maybe it's the weight of pretense with ourselves, when we've been trying so hard not to think or feel this, or face that, or whatever it is. We think, well, what I need to do because things don't look so hot is try harder. Well, there you go, It's harder, right? So there's such liberty, so much liberty in just saying, you know what? Here's how it is. And we did that last week because, the paradigm of what we're doing right here is shifting. The paradigm of what we're doing right here is shifting. And so we're painting it red. Have you ever complained about a relationship and then a friend, let's say you complained about a relationship and the other person beat you to it and broke up with you. And then your best friend said, "Oh, goody, congratulations." And you wanted to just, bop her in the nose or something. Or if you disliked a job and then you got laid off or fired or transferred or something. And for a moment you thought, yeah, but I wanted to be the one. Well, those are examples of when life tells the truth for you. Okay? In all of this, though, because we're getting to decoding life's signals and finding freedom and joy, we're talking about looking at what life gives us. And that in every case, whether it looks like a rose or kind of awful, gray or brown or whatever it looks like, there's a gift there for us. And the other thing, there was a quote from Ernest Holmes a couple days ago in the daily meditation about how nobody can walk through this door for us. Nobody can walk through that door of revelation and healing and whatever except for the one making that entry. So none of us can know for someone else exactly what their experience is about or for. We do often help one another as friends and professionals when we're ready to discover what that might be, but ultimately the answer and the purpose of our experience is up to us. And still, I just love this idea of decoding life's clues. I used to play detective when I was a little kid inside the house, and my friends and I, we would leave notes for each other and clues, and you just had to follow them. It was a very quiet game. And we all had forts or offices in different closets in the house I grew up in. And we would just, it was a blast. So, anyway. So, becoming a metaphysician in my adult life. And, you know how I did that? I did that because I wanted to understand. I just wanted to feel better. I just wanted the drama to stop. I just wanted things to turn out better. What we do typically is we come into and move through this life thinking that life is happening to us rather than through us. And we're very fortunate that we've ended up in places like this where we're beginning to learn about how life happens through us. There is a Christian teaching that says it is done unto us as we believe, done unto you as you believe. And there are many other teachings around the world that have a similar message. And we know at this point, because gosh, what the bleep came out, 10 years ago or more? Goodness, probably more, right? Because I think I lived in Asheville, North Carolina, so that would have been more. Okay. So anyway, we now know that quantum physics says what you look for is what you find. Okay? And we know that energy says that your resonance attracts people and situations or entities. I don't know the language of that field. It's the same resonance. We know this in harmonics and music. We know it in terms of vibration. That your vibratory frequency attracts to it that which is a match for it. And we've heard all of the new thought, new age, corporate trainers, everybody talk about how you can tune the dial to a different level and have a different experience. This is not new to us. Here's the rub, though. We're still, many of us, having some experiences we'd rather not be having. We're still on our way to the ones we like to be having. And we know we need very much to remember what those tools are to help us read those clues. Whether they are about our energetic frequency or you just say your attitude, they both work the same way. Whether they are of a deep, repeating and revisiting sense of self-doubt that turns into self-sabotage, that proves that nothing ever works out anyway. I'm part of that club, all right? And I am here because I'm going to keep using these tools. I'm going to keep remembering that I can call on that greater idea that is never doubted, that is waiting within me for me to say hello, right? And I can call upon my friends in this community who haven't forgotten. We can take turns remembering and forgetting. And we will get through together till we're no longer playing this game of trying to remember who we truly are. In the meantime, life gives us clues. Life gives us clues. So there's this beautiful thing that no matter what is going on, that it leaves evidence somehow. And the way that that evidence shows up, most of you already know this, the way that that evidence shows up in what we call out there is that it begins on a pathway that biblically is called Genesis, and we just call it creative, that we've discovered through all of those modalities that I mentioned is constantly going on. It begins in mind, logos, thought, idea. But not in the brainy, I think I'll kind of way. There's something that rises up, and it could be real or it could be memorized, right? It could be that memory from childhood that says, you can't do that. But whatever rises up that we get a hold of, we catch it, and then we say, yeah. If we agree with it, then what happens is we give it some more attention, right? And then what happens is we have a feeling, because feeling follows thought. And then what happens? Well, pretty soon there's some emotion going on, energy and motion. And then what happens? Pretty soon we're saying things, and we're doing things. We're making choices. We're seeing things, and we're missing others. We're hearing things, and we're missing others. There's this selectivity that goes along with this pathway. In quantum physics, I'm going to attempt to just share this little piece, but the wave state of infinite possibility, as Deepak Chopra has called it, becomes particularized when we focus on it in a particular way. And then the appearance is of all of those electrons, all of those possibilities that seemed to be there before vanish. And we have just that one thing that we said yes to. And so really, like it or not, it's going on all the time. This is our aha, oh no moment in New Thought. It's the aha, oh no moment, because it's like, okay, so this is going on all the time. I can't turn it off, take a break, think about it. It's going on anyway. Also, because we are free, this is not something, remember, this isn't something someone else can do for us. So this is a very personal experience with the constant process of creativity. So the way that stuff shows up, and for so many of us this is a review, is that it begins with an idea, and we say yes to it. And then it becomes something that we feel and we believe, we agree to, and this thing starts to happen because that's just what happens in the universe. And we end up with something becoming visible and tangible. We can touch it, right? There it is. Now, quite often, still, for many of us, people, circumstances, and stuff show up that are a reflection of what we really don't want to be doing anymore. Then what? Well, I have this thing that I do in our classes, and I thought about using the whiteboard, but I'm going to do that in class, that involves tracking backwards from those things that we don't desire to be experiencing, and then putting something new in motion. So, we take the evidence of something happening that we'd rather not be experiencing, and we say, okay, I know how this goes, and I really would like this to be happening differently. And by the way, I do not mean to make light of those things that take longer, because I have also my own periods of needing to go in, deep within, turn off everything, set aside the whole world, and get with something that's knocking on the door of my heart before I can come back out and converse and operate in this way. That happens cyclically at the right time for all of us. But let's say it's something simple like this, because the principle is the same. Let's say that lately, over the past 3 weeks, we've developed this pattern of being chronically late for everything. And it's no fun, because it's a domino effect and it just makes a mess. Okay, so we have late. Late is the appearance, the experience. So here's what we do. We say, what was my emotional state? And what was I doing when I showed up late? I bet you know. Harried, right? Rushing, and I felt harried. Okay, we back up and we say, so what was I feeling right before I got harried and hurried? Well, I was feeling this sense of dread that I was going to be late and that it was going to play out in a certain way. So we back up one more time and say, what was I thinking before all of that unraveled? I was thinking, I'm going to be late. Oh, it's going to be, you know? And back of that, if you take some time, you may find this idea that says, you can't have that. Whatever that is, I can't have that. I can't have it work out. I can't have it. I can't be there early. I can't be there on time. I can't enjoy it. Whatever, you know. Whatever, as far back as you can go, Ernest Holmes says to resolve everything to the thought, the idea behind it. And if it's not true, by golly, replace it. If you can't think straight, just go for the opposite. It'll be a really good substitute, right? Okay. So the opposite of I can't have that is, yes, I can. And when I think I can have that, this conference had a juicy schedule. I highlighted things weeks in advance. You know, and I knew, for example, I knew I was going to be with this guy Gus doing mindfulness meditation. I knew it. I knew it more clearly than I knew I was going to be at another thing with Emmett Fox yesterday. Because Emmett Fox yesterday, I was late. So I knew this. And what happened was I knew it, and I was so certain about it, I was so looking forward to it, that was all that I paid attention to. And only feelings that agreed with that followed. Only emotions that agreed with those feelings and thoughts showed up. And only actions that supported them all and the fulfillment of that vision were the ones that I took. Not because I'm smart, but because I was in love with the idea. I was 100% on board with it. And so I got to be there and sit in the front row and have this, even though I had had coffee that day, just sit and melt into this wonderful mindfulness meditation. You know, it's like butter, you know. So what we can do when life gives us something other than what we desire is remember that this creative process is going on all the time. And we can track back. We can say, okay, if it goes from thought to feeling to emotion to action to something happening on the invisible side of life while I'm pretty sure I know what's going on. And then something showing up. I can track it back from what showed up to emotion and action. You know, where was I and what was I really about in that moment? And then feeling that preceded it, and thought that preceded that, and an idea, true or false, that preceded that. Replace it, and focus on it, and say yes to it, and fall in love with it, embrace it, and let yourself be with it. And what will happen, even when you imagine, even when you pretend something like that, is that the feeling will follow, the emotion will develop, and the actions will be the urges that you have to do things, to call people, to set stuff up, to research, to take a step, to make yourself present and available for that thing. And it will happen. Because that is what the law of cause and effect does. So, there's one more thing to this. And that is what I talked about just a moment ago. That is that this is something that we learn over time with practice. So many people in the process of their own healing get into this place of saying, oh, what an idiot I am. Look what I created. Don't go there. We had an experience a couple weeks ago that was so bizarre, and I just laughed. I said, well, you know, I study this, and I watch detective show reruns, and we had this little run-in with a charlatan who was just going to say the day, and it turned out to be an apparition, and I thought, how beautiful it can move through that in such grace. Not, you know, what's wrong with me for having attracted it? I just fed my imagination, you know, detective shows and the power of belief, and had this little episode walk in the door and walk right back out, because I'm not a vibrational match for that experience. So don't give yourself a hard time None of us has arrived. Abraham would say, if you think you've arrived, then you wouldn't be on the planet anymore. So everywhere, every one of us, wherever we are, we're in our perfect and right place. And we are disciples. We are choosing to discipline our thinking and our feeling, our attention, our love. Because we know that more is possible than the experience that we're having right now. Not only for us, but for our brothers and sisters on this planet, for one another as individuals, as groups, as families, as communities. So I invite you to just remember to reverse engineer and re-engineer. Understand that the creative process is constantly going on. And take those clues from life and let them show you precisely where that new thought is ready to be entertained. Precisely where the healing is ready to happen. You'll know, because it will be the thing in your life that gets your attention and that has it now. All right? So I want to thank you so much for choosing to be here this morning and for stepping into this refresher with me. I know that as we go out from here, we are so blessed. Namaste.